Early in the 1920s, two men stood between the by wings of a naval aircraft and charted a course for the test, development, and proper maintenance of naval aviation survival equipment. This brief film, just bits and pieces of early documentation of the work and bravery of naval parachutists, was salvaged from near destruction in 1970. It is with greatest respect dedicated to the two Chief Petty Officers selected to establish the Navy's Parachute School at Lakehurst, New Jersey in 1924, Chief Petty Officer Lyman H. Ford and Alva F. Starr, true pioneers in the field of aviation survival equipment for the United States Navy. The use of lighter-than-air aircraft, called blimps, and other things, were used for many years as a platform from which students at the school would make a free-fall jump as a test of confidence in their work. Shown here just west of Hangar 1 at Lakehurst may very well be one of few formation takeoffs ever executed by airship pilots. Blue Angels, eat your hearts out. Arriving over the jump area, rope ladders were released over the side of the open gondola. Little or no forward speed would be maintained by the airship pilot. Jumpers would descend the ladders, check below for open canopies, take a firm grip on the ripcord handle, release themselves from the ladder, and pull the ripcord sharply. Delayed openings in freefall were not to be considered, since these jump procedures did allow for the hazardous possibility of dropping onto another jumper's open canopy. With design improvements, the speed of newer aircraft became a concern to be addressed, and parachutes, which had become required on all flights, had to keep pace with the needs of the fleet. In addition to those worn on the back and chest, the seat-type parachute was developed to conserve space in the cockpits of fighter aircraft. Flotation equipment, such as rafts and life vests, for use in naval aircraft evolved from shipboard types. Improved flight clothing for the comfort and protection of the pilots and air crewmen gained protection. And with increased altitude capabilities during World War II, aircraft became equipped with oxygen breathing equipment for pilots and air crewmen. The maintenance and testing of all aviation survival equipment was the responsibility of the young men and women trained to be parachute riggers at the Navy School at Lakehurst, New Jersey. And all scenes shown in this film were taken at Lakehurst or the surrounding area. Instructors in those early years of the school were required to serve a twofold capacity, one of teaching students and the other of testing newly designed equipment. In the 1940s, a separate test and development department was established and transferred to El Centro, California, where weather conditions were favorable for year-round jump operations. It was there every item of aviation survival equipment was extensively tested under strenuous live jump conditions before being approved for use by Navy pilots and air crewmen. It took a special breed of men to jump over and over again, hundreds of times, with equipment fresh off the drawing board. Of all the men who so valiantly served at the Navy Parachute Test Unit at El Centro, two names stand out for their knowledge, skill, and bravery: Chief Warrant Officer Lewis T. Vinson and Master Chief Petty Officer Harold W. Pickard, both of whom were awarded the Navy Air Medal for individual acts of heroism and outstanding contributions to improving safety conditions for Navy pilots and air crewmen. The Navy Parachute Test Unit has since been relocated to the Naval Weapons Center at China Lake, California. Originally named in 1924 as the Parachute Materiel School, it was renamed as the Parachute Rigger School in 1944. In later years, it was designated the Air Crew Survival Equipment Man School. A name, although somewhat cumbersome, is intended to be all-inclusive of the items maintained. The school has since been relocated to the Naval Training Command at Memphis, Tennessee, where most other naval aviation maintenance schools are located. Watch now for a student who has second thoughts about leaving the aircraft, which occasionally happens on their first jump. But the hefty foot of an alert instructor would help him make up his mind. Until approximately 1960, students who refused to jump with chutes they personally packed were terminated from the school. The jump then became optional. However, few students declined to jump. Back in the early years of the school, jump operations at Lakers were conducted over the runway area near Hangar 1. And with little control over the drift of their parachutes, jumpers often experienced hard landings on the runway surface. In later years, a mile-wide circle was cleared in the woods west of the air station, primarily for airship operations. It also became an ideal area for conducting parachute jump operations, since most of the surface was covered with loose sand. Once on the ground, jumpers gathered at the center of the jump circle, each student eager to tell their personal experience of their first parachute jump. Student jumps were conducted with a one-on-one instructor-student ratio and a high degree of close supervision. Shown in the door as a jumper's load is Jumpmaster Bill Offenhauser, the first parachute rigger in the Navy, promoted to Master Chief Petty Officer when the rate came into effect in 1958. Instructors at the school were frequently required to conduct proficiency jumps under the watchful eye of the senior jumpmaster, thereby ensuring their readiness for jumping with each graduating class. During instructor proficiency jumps, a more casual attitude was present than when students were on board the plane. The free fall parachute jump, with the equipment personally rigged and packed by each student, was the ultimate performance test and the high point of their months of training. This requirement was maintained with an enviable safety record for over 50 years until deleted from the school's curriculum in the 1970s. Occasionally, a gust of wind would cause a jumper to drift into the surrounding woods. Although not particularly hazardous, it did make for a long walk to the gathering point at the center of the jump circle. During jump operations, students from junior classes would be on hand to assist in collapsing the parachute canopies and placing them in protective bags. Malfunctions of equipment were rare, but if one occurred, students were well trained in emergency procedures. For many years, John Scheib, a former parachute rigger, was the school's civilian educational specialist. John would position himself at the center of the jump circle during operations to give instructions to the descending students. If a student had a malfunction, John would call out, "Put out your reserve, put out your reserve," which frequently resulted in several students putting out the reserves that didn't need to. John and his bullhorn were eventually retired from the jump circle. This film, faded and gray as it is in spots, depicts but a small part of a very colorful era in naval aviation history.